other guy. What is she talking about here? That if this statement. First, from here I know they are inversely related, so on the graph is this way, right? Now for sloping. What did she mean by this? Firms that do data monitoring must pay higher efficiency wage. Now you understand why, right? Because the firms that spend very little money on monitoring the worker cheap. That's right. So therefore, we need a higher efficiency wage to deter cheating. So in other words, this statement is firms that do very little monitoring. If you monitor very little, if you spend less money on monitoring, the probability of detecting cheating is higher or lower. The probability of detecting cheating is lower, so low, a higher efficiency wage is required to deter cheating. Now, for those firms who spend a lot of money on monitoring, what will happen? The chances of detecting cheating higher or lower? Higher, right? Then will people dare to cheat? No, even now, this made it so very hard to cheat. I just received a brochure from Singtel. You can put the thing in your house. And but anywhere, even I come to school, I check my handphone and see what my date is today. Right? So actually, it's not very useful. My freedom is online. You have to do what you like best to do now. Every day I turn on, I just turn on my handphone and see what's going on in my house. You all receive the brochure. They say supposed to wash on daily and not to go and wash on daily. Understand? But people will abuse. Okay, in any case, if you spend more money on monitoring, the probability of detecting cheating is very high. Right? Do you need to pay efficiency wage? No, they are not cheap. That's why you see, when the probability of detecting cheating is so high, a lower efficiency wage will be. Right? Simply because it is not cheap. Just like for us, the school don't have to pay us any efficiency wage. Because our probability of detecting cheating is 100%. Once we search 100% get caught. Right? If you look around here, this thing, I want to see stock prices looking up. I want to see bond prices looking up. Right? I want to hide under the table and see should look up. Because under the table I saw one funny thing. I don't know what's that. Right. That's why I wear long pants to work. So how to cheat? Very hard, you know? Very difficult to shut, thinking every day how to shut. Not easy. Right, so that's why they have to pay us efficiency wage. Right? So obvious, nobody there to cheat. So now, if you were to pay efficiency wage, then let me tell you one thing. There's no point you pay and you don't monitor. You know why? If you don't monitor your worker and you pay him, will he cheat? 100%. Because the gain from cheating is higher. You get WE plus G. So if you are to introduce efficiency wage, it's very costly. It's very costly. Because the costs include what? Paying the higher wage. Okay, all these red color things are functions. For firms, if you want to introduce efficiency wage, the cost to cost. Monitoring cost plus paying a higher wage. You understand? I said before, if you don't go and monitor him, then you better don't pay him. Because he will turn cheap. If you understand why you're cheap, the payoff is higher. You understand? Payoff is higher, right? Because you see, if I know my firms don't monitor, even though they pay me WE, why I cheat? So if I don't cheat, I get WE. If I cheat, I get WE plus what? Plus G. So now you understand what? If a firm wants to pay efficiency wage, must we monitor? Yes, so the cost of paying efficiency wage is more costly than what we think. It's not just about paying a higher wage. But the firms must also spend money monitoring. So therefore the cost comes from these two sources. This and this. Now one thing you must also understand. You must understand. Even the firm want to minimize cost. Even if you wish to minimize cost, subject to what? Still pay this efficiency rate. Don't pay nothing. Understand? You want the workers to be efficient, you want to minimize this cost of implementing it. But subject to wage cannot be lower than this. This is the efficiency rate. Now, you see, we also in the dilemma. Why? Because the thing is this. If you spend more money monitoring, your cost will be higher. You agree? But then there's a trade-off. There's a trade-off. You spend more money monitoring, the probability of detecting cheating is higher or lower? Higher. So don't worry about spending more money on monitoring, because the probability of detecting cheating is higher. But there's one problem. When the probability of detecting cheating is higher, will workers tend to cheat? No? So a lower efficiency ratio. So there's a trade-off. Understand? Because if you want a higher P, if you want a higher probability of detecting cheating, the firm has to spend more money on monitoring. But the good thing is that if you spend more money, a higher P means a lower WE. So there's a trade-off between monitoring costs and the efficiency rate. Understand? A higher P is good because it reduces the efficiency rate. Because if the probability of detecting cheating is higher, the efficiency rate is lower. But if you want a higher probability of detecting cheating, the firm must spend more money monitoring. So there's a trade-off. So what's the level of P that you want? Can you find for me the amount of P that will help the firm to minimize costs? What's the optimal P? The probability of detecting cheating. The higher the P, the lower the WE. But the higher the P, the higher the monitoring cost. So what's the acceptable level of P that will help the firm to minimize costs? Too high a P is good for reducing this, but it's bad for this, right? So we will find the optimal P that will help the firm to minimize costs. Okay, so therefore you need DCODP. Understand? We'll find the optimal P to minimize costs. Now first, given that WE is subject to this constraint means you have to obey. Put this inside here. Therefore the cost becomes this. Now, this P can I bring to the top? When we bring this P to the top, it becomes P to the power of -1, right? Okay, so from here, I know that a higher P is good for reducing wage, but bad for monitoring costs. So I'm trying to find the acceptable level of P that will help the firm to minimize costs. This is called the minimum cost implementation problem. To find the minimum cost of implementing efficiency wage. Understand? The minimum cost implementation problem to minimize costs. So how to find the optimal P to minimize costs? So that's what we do. Right. DCODP is set to 0. Now if DCODP and set to 0, that will give you the optimal P that will help the firms to minimize costs. Okay? So you differentiate with respect to P, set to 0. Solve for P. If you solve for P, then you, okay, there's no much involved. Just rearrange the equation from here. Solve for P. So you rearrange the equation to solve for P. What do you get? You get P as equal to D. Okay. What's the implication? And I think you have done enough of this point. How do you interpret this thing here? What does this mean? To minimize costs, the firm will set P to how much? This value. Okay? This P will help the firm to what? of this equation, you can also see one thing. If G rise, should P be higher or lower? The higher is G. The higher is G, the higher is P. Right? The equation. So I'll try to explain this statement to you what she says. What she's saying here is this. If the gain to a worker is very, if G at work is very high, that means she says if G is very high, you will be in the interest of the firm to spend more money on the rate. Can you understand this? What she means from this? If the gain to cheating is very high, you will be in the firm's interest to spend more money on monitoring. Okay, the reason very simple. If G is very high, now, see, as long as this is equal, firms are minimizing costs. Right. But if G go up, P has to go up in order for this equation to be equal again. Why you need them to be equal? Then costs are minimized. Understand? So if G rise, P must rise so that they are equal again to minimize costs. So if you want P to go up, you must spend more money on it. Okay? That's what she means. If G goes up, P has to go up. But in order for P to go up, the firm has to spend more money on it. That's all. Okay, so today we stop.